Good morning, everybody. We're here for another interesting discussion for our recent special JSCAI issue on the role of AI in cardiovascular interventions. Today, our focus will be on the section of the issue dedicated to AI in training and education in cardiovascular interventions. My name is Yiannis Chatzizisis. I am the professor and chief of the Division of Cardiovascular Medicine at the University of Miami and director of the Center for Digital Cardiovascular Innovations. I had the honor, along with Dr. Edelman from MIT, to co-edit that JSCAI special issue dedicated, focused on the role of AI in cardiovascular interventions, a very fresh issue, a combination of many interesting and forward-thinking papers. Today, we're here to discuss, as I said, three of those excellent papers that we published in this issue, which are focused mostly on training and education. We have a paper to discuss on the role of ChatGPT on taking the boards. We have a paper on education using multimodality imaging for bifurcation and stenting, and also on the role of virtual reality and haptics in education in the CathLab. Along with me, I have four esteemed colleagues, Dr. Chatterjee from Zach School of Medicine in New York, assistant professor of interventional cardiology, Dr. Nanda, he's associate from New York as well. And then we have Dr. DeVos from the Visible Heart Lab. And then, of course, finally, we have, last but not least, Dr. Simard, assistant professor of medicine in Mayo. We will start with the first paper presented by Drs. Chatterjee and Nanda on the role of ChatGPT to take the boards.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm very grateful to be able to present our work on ChatGPT's performance on CathSAP. So CathSAP is the Cath self-assessment program. It's a question bank that many interventional cardiology fellows use in preparation for their boards. We've seen that artificial intelligence and large language models have been performing exceedingly well in competitive examinations. But in the medicine field, they've shown like near passing scores in USMLE and radiology board style questions. So we wanted to ask the question about whether it could do well on interventional cardiology board style questions, especially the more nuanced subspecialty questions. Based on the groundwork of the previous studies that were focused on a more static approach of ChatGPT's performance, we moved the focus a little bit to adaptability as well. In this, we kind of try to assess the ChatGPT's performance at the outset and then try to determine its learning potential by performing a teaching initiative or a teaching experiment. So we essentially took 360 questions from CathSAP. This was after excluding image and video-based questions, and we input each question into a new window in ChatGPT. If ChatGPT answered the question incorrectly, we took pertinent text from the key point of the corresponding question and then asked ChatGPT the answer again. The overall performance of ChatGPT was actually 54.44%. This was below the passing threshold of CathSAP, which was supposed to be around 70%. After teaching, its percentage improved to around 79.16%. This was statistically significant difference before and after teaching. When we compare its performance to the average human test taker, which was documented around 75.8%, we see that the difference between ChatGPT after teaching and the average human test taker was not statistically significant, which means that it was comparable. Looking at a few domains, we see that ChatGPT performed pretty well in the pharmacological section. At the initial attempt, it scored around 66.67%, here to close to passing. We think that this could be because of the structured and widely available pharmacological information that already exists in the public domain. Similarly, in basic sciences and miscellaneous sections, we see similar good performances above passing threshold in both at the initial attempt itself. This is again because of the large amount of foundational knowledge that exists in the public domain. Going over to the anatomical subsection, we see that its performance has actually been substandard even after teaching. And this could be because of the difficulty in explaining through text alone the complex spatial relationships that exist between different anatomical structures. In clinical care related domains, ChatGPT underperformed as well. This we think is possible because the human test takers, the fellows, are basically deriving their clinical competence and their ability to answer these questions from very nuanced clinical cues that they're deriving through years of like clinical exposure, a dimension that is currently lacking in ChatGPT. For further discussion and limitations, I would like to now defer to my corresponding co-author, Dr. Chatterjee.
Thanks, Saumya, for the great overview. I think you have covered almost everything to a great extent. To me, this was essentially exploring the potential that ChatGPT has in terms of, a learner, so to speak. On a blank slate, it performed pretty well, and after training, it improved significantly, possibly to an extent greater than an average cardiology fellow does, which was a little surprising. In any ways, just quickly going back to the limitations, I mean, this was tested using the ChatGPT version 3.5, of which 4.0 is now available, which does allow more nuanced learning as well as output analyses. And also the other thing that was left out was that we could not test the imaging or the sound-based questions, of which there weren't many, probably like less than 10. However, that's something that ChatGPT 3.5 at that time was unable to handle, but future iterations will be. Finally, one of the things that kind of came up also was that some of the nuances or some of the responses to the questions were triggered by keywords, and potentially there could be alternative explanations that could be interpreted from the question itself, because essentially CathSAP is derived, as we all know, is on the basis of the best possible answer. And there could be potential interpretations that ChatGPT insinuated, even which could potentially have a logical basis, which would not necessarily reflect the most best correct answer as purported by CathSAP. So I would like to stop here for the sake of time and would love to take any questions or discuss further if there are any.
Excellent, excellent. That was very refreshing, as I said, and very well presented. Obviously, this opens some very interesting, potentially helpful avenues in education. The question is, how do you see this kind of like provocative idea of having a machine passing the boards with success rates even better than sometimes the actual human beings? How do you see this radical forward-thinking provocative concept playing a role in education in the years to come?
Thank you for the great question, Dr. Chatzizisis. First of all, at this point, the potential is limitless. We really do not know how these will shape up in their future iterations as we develop more and more iterative models and greater computational abilities. Purely from the aspect of the educational capabilities as experienced by us while performing this study on ChatGPT 3.5. I think some of the things that came up were that there is potential for a differential way of thinking of doing a problem, because there is potentially multiple answers that could have elaboration in differential ways to kind of either select or eliminate the best possible answer. In addition, this potentially, provides us with a storehouse, so to speak. This is essentially a very capable and, a very enthusiastic learner like student, where he or she has immense capability to retain as well as never forget, as well as to reproduce answers consistently in a definitive way when it's trained in a specific model. So, going forward, it opens up a huge potential for educational opportunities of trying innovative methods of teaching, potentially trying innovative, structures of learning, as well as training real life, student test takers to compete or learn from these kind of, iterative technology and models, not to mention going forward, using it in their own test taking ability.
Yeah, very interesting. And we all agree that, the machine, because the machine can never replace the brain, because the machine is based essentially on human intelligence. So if you feed the machine with data, then the machine will reach at some point as much as possible the human intelligence, but maybe will never exceed it, or maybe down the line will even perform better. But the point here is that the machine can help learn from the human, then the human then can learn from the machine, and this interaction can be very creative. Of course, there's always risks here, but again, as we said, AI is not here to be an enemy. AI is here to be used in a wise way to be our friend and ally in our mission. Excellent, very, very good point, and maybe we can get back to this at the end of the discussion. I'm going to move now to the next paper by Dr. DeVos. Welcome, Dr. DeVos. You're going to present on behalf of the Visible Heart Lab on an amazing group built by Dr. Iazo, my friend, Paul Iazo. You're going to present the development, the paper on development of an education application for multi-modal imaging of clinically implanted and bifurcation stenting procedures. Very interesting. Please.
Yeah, as Dr. Chatzizisis said, I'm from the Visible Heart Lab. And in our lab, we're able to reanimate large mammalian hearts. So this is typically swine hearts, but occasionally can be human hearts. And we do this with a clear blood substitute, which allows us to put cameras inside of the hearts while performing these device implantations. So we often are able to have physicians come down to the lab and learn about these different, most of the time, bifurcation stenting procedures. And so we were looking to be able to share this information out with people who are not able to come down and utilize the lab, as we can only serve a limited quantity of people for that educational experience. So the application combines our internal endoscopic views from within inside the heart throughout a bifurcation procedure, as well as the addition of what you would have available clinically, like fluoroscopy or optical coherence tomography. So you can visualize step by step what you would see clinically, as well as what's really going on that you can't necessarily catch on clinical imaging. So we combine all of that data with the post-op micro CT scan. So again, you get a full comprehensive view, and this is all in augmented reality. So you can move the model around, visualize every part, and see what the final structure outcome was. We also did imaging of clinically implanted stents within hearts that were donated to the lab when they weren't viable for transplant. So similarly, got endoscopic imaging, OCT, angiography, and micro CT scans. In this case, the stents had disease, so the calcification is also visible throughout the application. So yeah, overall, we're just trying to be able to share this in kind of a database style where you're able to search for procedures based on what you want to see, whether that's a specific technique or you want to see wire wrap or dissection or what that looks like, or a bailout strategy, and just be able to have that publicly available.
Yeah. Absolutely. Obviously, we would love to have also some hands-on or kind of like a visual appreciation of this from the Visible Heart Lab. But I've seen this before, and trust me, it's exciting. We talk about models which can give you the unique opportunity to acquire cognitive better cognitive learning and understanding of very complex bifurcation PCI concepts, which otherwise you would learn on the patient with by trial and error. I think that this kind of approach, again, is helping our learners to learn greater, faster, and better, and it's indispensable. That's why we appreciated this paper, and trust me, it's a very exciting educational learning tool. Let me pass to the last paper of the day, presented by Dr. Simard. Hello, Dr. Simard. Thanks for joining this company this morning. You're coming from Mayo, and you will present a very interesting paper on virtual reality simulations with integrated haptics, passive haptics prototype for cardiac cath lab training.
So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to join you guys this morning. So I'm an interventional cardiologist in my clinical job, and then my separate hat is in the area of virtual reality. So I'm the director of virtual reality efforts for the cardiovascular department here. We have a great team that is growing in concert with a great VR engineer here, Jack Miller. And this is one of our early projects that we worked on, trying to develop the integration of virtual reality into the cath lab. So as we all know, VR is becoming more and more ubiquitous and more available, especially in the clinical training theater. It has a lot of potential. What we saw, though, is that there's this gap between what you can see in virtual reality and what the actual physical integration is and what your ability to interact with the environment in the real world was. And certainly that leads to limitations in terms of its training efficacy. And so we were trying to look for different ways to improve that experience and make it so you have both a visual and haptic or physical interaction space. We figured this was a good marriage with interventional cardiology, because obviously a lot of what we learn in interventional cardiology training is related to motor skill development. And that is something that you can only learn on the fly by actually interacting with the environment. And we know there's good data published that as trainees are learning to do angiography and mobilize the C-arm and do all the things that we maybe take for granted on a day-to-day basis, that there is a cost in terms of additional radiation administration and procedural efficiency. And so perhaps it was a good area to explore for this type of use. And so what we developed was we call it an integrated passive haptics system. And essentially, if you look down here on the bottom right panel and see there is this 3D printed physical C-arm controlling module. And this is actually spatially tracked in the VR environment. So when you put the VR headset on, you see this in panel B, and you can actually see where your hand is in that space. And the VR actually merges in this physical controller, so that when you're reaching out in space, you're actually touching the same controls, that it feels like a real virtual cath lab that you can actually touch and move. And when you push down and move that table around, it behaves exactly like what a typical controller was. It has some resistance to push and all of those things that we take for granted when you're trying to drive the cath lab table around. So the idea of this is that it generates this virtual environment that trainees can learn how to drive the table, learn how to pan, learn how to do fluoroscopy. And then in addition, we built in a module to it where it will show you what the projections are. And so you can go through, finding the appropriate fluoroscopic projections. You'll get prompts and then tell you if you've done a good job and gotten to the appropriate area and done appropriate radiation conserving measures, all those types of pieces. And that you can essentially spend time on this, learning how to get to the right projections, do the floor to set up the shots, and do the cine angiography and pan to get high fidelity coronary angiography completed. And then in addition, there's a built-in 3D model, especially while you're learning the coronary anatomy, that will integrate and show you, why the angiography looks like what it looks like in a given projection. So, this was the initial prototype stage, working out the engineering pieces, making it seamless. And I said with Jack, our VR engineer, this is a truly something when you work with it, it feels like it's real. It is a very immersive environment, and it's incredible that it actually works as well as it does. And so we're still ironing out the last pieces of the prototype phase, and hopefully moving towards doing some efficacy studies with the trainees to see if we can improve the learning curve for their development of skills in the cath lab. So fairly succinct, that's what this paper was about, and happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. Very exciting. We obviously are all very strong proponents of this amazing educational incentive, where we use these simulations, virtual reality, or computation simulations to provide our trainees with the opportunity to learn greater, faster, and better. We have something similar in our center as well. But I see these tools becoming more handy in the years to come. This is an X-ray free environment. This is a contrast free environment. This is an environment where you can imitate, the cath lab in a very forgiving, as I said, environment, and you can spend as much time as you want. Seeing is believing. You can spend an hour, 2 hours, whether it's virtual reality or simulations, or sometimes with haptic kind of like direct, feedback, and learn and be ready for the prime time. So my question to you is, how quickly do you see this this becoming standard of training?
Yes, I think we'll see how the real world adoption goes. I think the positive factors for it is it's incredibly cost effective. This is not a huge list in terms of the technical things that are required for it, nor the investment you need to put into it. I think our vision here is that we will develop a few of these modules and just have them readily available for the fellows who, as you said, can just plug in anytime. If they want to brush up on their skills before the cath lab, they can do so at leisure. I think there's always barriers that anticipated and unanticipated. The VR environments, the VR headsets come with some trouble sometimes for some individuals. Simulator sickness is a real thing, and not everyone is as keen about that. We are, concomitantly developing a non-VR headset based in kind of an immersive screen environment to try to mitigate those factors. But I don't really see any major barriers to it, because, as you said, it's a win-win in terms of radiation contrast. It's not super resource intensive, and it provides a real world ability that will hopefully help advance trainee skills. How much uptake you get from a business perspective is a separate consideration. Obviously, the marketplace for this is perhaps not as large, and so how much buy-in from industry you get and how broadly this gets disseminated, I think, would be limited mainly by that factor. But as you said, I think it's an interesting area with very little downside and hopefully a lot of upside.
I believe that it's up to us. It's like the IVUS or OCT guided PCI that shows, it's a mortality benefit. It's something that should be standard of care. And it's up to the societies and us and the new generation, as educators, to train the new generation into this concept. So I believe in the very near future, not decades from today, very near future, a few years from today, it'll be part of the curriculum. It should be part of the curriculum. I think our society, SCAI, and other societies should make it happen. It should be part of the curriculum before you go to the actual rotation in the cath lab as general fellow or as an interventional fellow, to pass through these modules, leveraging technology, and become familiar with the projections, with the techniques, with everything. Spend, let's say, as a mandatory training or like 5 hours, 10 hours. It's going to be, I believe, part of the mandatory educational curriculum. It should be. All right, so let me sum up here. Let's have a little global discussion in the next few minutes. So I think we had a very nice combination here of three interesting papers, which more or less they drift around the same concept of leveraging AI simulations, new technologies for education and training, all the way from passing the boards to bifurcation PCI, to learning projections and learning how to operate in the cath lab before you actually go there, and avoid learning on the patient by trial and error. How do you see, Dr. DeVos, the future? Where do you see things going in the next, I would say, 5 years?
Yeah, I think as kind of everyone talked about, all these technologies are going to become more and more prominent in the educational side. Our lab does a series of applications, not just this mobile stenting app, but like VR and ultrasound technologies, and just general kind of heart anatomy, fly-throughs, and things like that. So I think, at least at our university, those are slowly being uptaken into some of the classroom activities, or like the simulators. I think as they become more and more realistic, more and more representative of what goes on, then they'll be uptaken, but it'll be a process.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. I'm going to challenge you by asking you to just give us one word to describe these technologies that we presented today. One word.
I think the word would be potential.
Okay, great.
I think my word would be the future.
It's two. It's the future.
That's a good point.
And I'm going to close with Dr. Simard. How just one word, your one word for the whole thing here.
Gosh, promising. How about that?
So you see potential, promising, future. So you're totally aligned on the perspective essentially. And I think that again, I would like to thank you so much for this very nice discussion this morning. We very much enjoyed your science, your papers, your innovative spirit. That's why we included your work in this special issue. Thank you so much, the JSCAI and the editor, Dr. Lansky, for giving us the opportunity to edit this issue and put together these nice papers. It was very well received, your papers and the whole issue. And I believe that we all did some nice work here, some forward-thinking work. Again, there's future, as you said, there's potential, there's perspective, there's excitement, and have a beautiful and exciting day. Thank you so much.